Hi, everybody. I'm Frank Stanishi of Open Forum, Candid, Frank, and Live. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV Channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google, Chromecast, Amazon, Fire TV Sticks, Roku Sticks, and also on Smart TVs 2016 forward. Now on Open Forum, joining me is Luis Moreno. He's running for Sault Ste. Marie Ward 3 Council. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, this is great. Thank you, Frank, for the opportunity. It's been a couple of few months of campaigning, and I'm excited because we're only just 17 days away from Election Day.
Very good. As long as Mexico and Italy don't play soccer during this broadcast, we'll be fine.
I think so too. Oh my goodness, yes, that's what I get at the doors. Are you Mexican or are you Italian? I'm like, well, I'm Mexican, but I hope that because the World Cup is about to come, right? So
Yeah,
thank goodness after Election Day.
My background's Italian. I was born here. Okay, well, I can rip my paper because everything's behind you that we need to talk about. But first, let's talk about your background and your history. I know you went to University of Toronto. What's a retail support specialist at OLG?
So, yes, currently I work at Ontario Lottery and Gaming. It's back in the early 90s, late 80s. Sault Ste. Marie was chosen to be the headquarters for the lottery, and we have the headquarters here in Sault Ste. Marie. In It's a big branch. It's a big building. There's about 800 employees at OLG here in Sault Ste. Marie. And my department is a department that serves as the first contact between a brand new lottery retailer, and we help them obtain a lottery terminal in their store. We help them and guide them through the lottery licensing process. We're also the department that helps them remove the lottery terminal if they wish to close their store, or if they plan on moving the lottery terminal to another location. We're also the department that helps them do that.
Tell us about Strive YPG.
Right. So the Strive Young Professionals, that is a great program, and I encourage every young individual who's watching this channel to join as many young professional groups in your city. I think it's great to network with other young professionals because you get to learn about other people's jobs. It also helps you connect with individuals who have more experience than you, who can help you understand their career path, and also someone who is just in university or college or about to graduate high school and they're undecided which path to take in their career field. It's important to join them. So that's what I joined Strive Young Professionals, because it helped me network with other professionals in different fields. And prior to actually announcing my candidacy, it really helped me understand the needs of young people. The demographics when it comes to voting patterns. Young people tend not to vote on election day, but you kind of really need to hear them out as why they're not voting. We have to give them a reason to vote in elections. Oftentimes you hear about major concerns, but that doesn't mean that they're their concerns. And therefore, it's important to connect with young people as well. I'm actually the second youngest candidate running in Sault Ste. Marie. My friend Merrick, who is 19, is the youngest candidate. And I'm 29 years old. And I've been knocking on so many doors just simply because I believe that we have to encourage as many people as possible to vote on election day.
That's there's a whole more we can unpack out of that
Oh, yeah.
statement. We'll get to that. Just I want to concentrate on your background and where you've been. Now, what's important to you as well is the Northern Ontario Latin Hispanic Association, NOLA.
That is extremely important. It was actually the first group that I joined when I moved to Sault Ste. Marie. So Sault Ste. Marie has a population of between 70,000 to 75,000 people. When I first moved to the Sioux, I've noticed that the ethnic groups in the Sioux were very, very small. And over the past few years, those populations have grown dramatically. And the Latin Hispanic Association, they are actually one of the strongest minority groups here in the Sioux. They're well coordinated. They have Spanish classes at the local libraries. I was actually a Spanish instructor when I first moved to the Sioux, and it's a great opportunity because people are hungry for diversity. They're embracing different ethnic groups. And actually, there was an article that came out the other day where Sault Ste. Marie has seen a rise of South Asian population here in the Sioux, and that is due because Algoma University and Sault College, they're trying to bring many international students. The Latin American student population has grown as well in both Algoma and Sault College. And actually, on October the 22nd, the Northern Ontario Latin Hispanic Association will be hosting their second Gala Latina. Their first one was in 2019, just before the pandemic, and unfortunately, due to COVID-19, they haven't had the opportunity to have any others up until this year, and that is to celebrate the Latin Hispanic Heritage Month in Canada. I also like to take the opportunity to encourage as many people to buy as many tickets as possible because I will be one of their MCs.
Absolutely. You're also a columnist for La Portada, Canada.
Yes, so actually, that was thanks to Eduardo. When I graduated from the University of Toronto back in 2016, I was looking for opportunities to be engaged in politics. To me, politics is not just about the idea of governing, but it's also about representation. And the Latin Hispanic population in Canada has grown dramatically over the years. Yes, we've had some representation in some levels of government across the country, and Eduardo invited me to be a political columnist. It was a great experience, I must say, writing articles about all levels of government. But it was also it helped to encourage people to follow politics. Our Canadian political system is very different from any Latin American country, and in order to understand how our system works, I think I serve that purpose. I wrote about the very basics of politics in Canada. I believe I wrote more than 185 articles in Spanish, and I had the pleasure of interviewing the former Premier of Ontario, Kathleen Wynne, in Queen's Park, and that really was a great experience. Being at Queen's Park and meeting the Premier. I take great pride on that because I was able to ask her hard questions during her government.
Now that's at arm's length. That's politics at
Yes.
arm's length. Now all of a sudden you start moving closer to politics. Explain to me what a canvas captain is.
Oh my goodness, that was also another experience that I will never forget. So after I graduated from university and I joined La Portada, I, like many young people, I wanted to vote and I didn't know who to vote for. So to me, I started being engaged in politics a little more, until I decided to join the New Democratic Party. And I was their canvas captain, which meant that I would be calling people or knocking on doors, encouraging people to go out and to vote for that specific party. That is simply because I align with their position on many issues, and I know that young people across the board, they're interested in politics, they're engaged in politics, but they don't know who to vote for, and that was my job, encouraging people to go out and vote on election day. I talked to so many people, I heard their concerns, and you get to a point where you hear their concerns, you understand their concerns, but how do you deliver that message to the people who have the power to make the difference? And I was stuck in that specific portion of politics because I didn't know what to do. But I'm sure we'll talk more about it, and this is why I'm running.
Oh, we'll get there for sure. And finally, so you've basically enveloped the idea of you've set it up to be a politician because you also at Wordsworth College were president of the Wordsworth Political Society. How that's where I guess you introduced yourself to politics and with other people, join them and to understand it.
That's absolutely right. Within the University of Toronto, there were many partisan groups. You had the Young Liberals, then the Young Democrats, the Young Conservatives, and in the Young Greens. But when I started to talk to other students, they've mentioned that they didn't know much about other political parties. They wanted a group where they could go in and talk about politics without any division, right? They just wanted to talk politics. They wanted to talk about policy. They wanted to hear from other political leaders from all political backgrounds. And so a couple of friends and I, we got together and we co-created the Woodsworth Political Society within UFT. And that was the first nonpartisan group within UFT. We had many panel discussions with many different political um, individuals from all political parties, from all levels of government as well. And we invited them to come to Woodsworth and talk about their ideas and how they're working together in Parliament at the provincial and federal level within all political parties. We discussed the idea of minority governments and how some parties actually have the control of government and they're able to persuade the governing body that we can see in the federal government as well. But it really helped us out to spread how government works, what other political parties are doing, and at the end of the day, we encourage young people to go out and vote in the 2015 election.
Yeah, you were talking about the difference in political systems. Ours is a parliamentary system, so you could literally not get a majority of the votes, but still end up in power, which seems counterintuitive. But I guess as a student, you begin to understand it. Let me start with talking about now what you're entering, and that is municipal politics. You're running for Sault Ste. Marie's Ward 3. Um, we've talked about all the levels of government. We haven't talked about municipal yet. Provincial and federal are things that we know because they get most of the attention. But a lot of the work that needs to be done where people are affected directly by politicians involves municipal politics. Is that a fair statement?
That is a fair statement. And that's one of the reasons I decided to put my name forward. So let me explain a little bit about how the politics here in Sault Ste. Marie work. There's a city, Sault Ste. Marie. It's a population of between 70 to 75,000 people. And it's divided into five different wards. So you have one, two, three, four, and five. Ward 3 is the biggest ward of all because it shares boundaries with all the remaining wards. Um, and now each ward has approximately 11,000, 12,000 electors, and each ward actually has two city councilors. So on election day, the constituents of Ward 3 will have a choice, and they get to pick two city councilors out of the four candidates. So on election day, there will be 10 city councilors and one mayor. In this 2022 municipal election, the people of Sault Ste. Marie will also be electing a new mayor. The current mayor, the incumbent, is not seeking re-election, and therefore they will be selecting a new mayor. Now, the other race to watch, in my opinion, will be Ward 3, and that is because the current two city councilors, Matthew Shoemaker and Donna Hilsinger, both of them are actually running for mayor, which makes Ward 3 an incumbent, a vacant seat. And that's why there's currently four candidates running for this position. I'm one of the candidates who's running in Ward 3 and who happens also to live in Ward 3. It's a big ward, as I said. It's humongous. It goes from for the people who are watching, from People's Road to Manitou Park, McNabb, all the way to Hiawatha, which is a big ward and a big part of Sault Ste. Marie. In my opinion, is the most central and the most northern ward. And I decided to run because just before uh, talking about the election process, we were in the middle of the provincial election. And the more I was knocking on doors and encouraging people to go out and vote, they said, "Hey, how come you don't put your name forward to run for politics?" And I said, "Oh, well, we'll visit that question in a couple of years." But the more I talked to grassroots organizations, to community leaders, to family and friends, they've said, "I think that this is your time to run." And I decided to put my name forward on June 22nd. Of this year, and ever since I've been campaigning, knocking on houses, and I'm sure we'll get more into that.
Well, what we can do now is that now that we've established who Luis Moreno is and where he comes from, one last thing I want to do, I want to talk about is you talked about the ethnic diversity, and there isn't that much in Sault Ste. Marie. I can tell you that What you do have there is old ethnic backgrounds. For fans of hockey out there, Phil Esposito's from Sault
That's
Ste.
right.
Marie. So, and there was a big Italian community there because of mining and such things like that. You talk to us now about a corporation there, a Canadian corporation, the Lottery Commission being there. That's good employment. Talk to us a little bit about your background and how you got here. Your mother made a sacrifice while in Mexico. That's where your family came from. And she came here, and by your definition, what I read about you is your mother gave up a great job to become a minimum wage employee. Why was that?
Yes, to many who know me, I was born and raised in Mexico. We moved, my family and I, to Toronto when I was 12 years old. They decided to make that move because back in 2006, the president back then, he declared war on drugs. And unfortunately, the security in Mexico, well, Mexico was in turmoil. There was a lot of economic uncertainty, security, insecurity, and my parents felt that it was time for them to leave. It wasn't any safe to be in Mexico. And my parents they made the decision to move to Toronto. And I came to this country not knowing the language, not understanding why we moved to a different country. And I didn't really question it. I was 12 years old. But as time passed by, I made several choices in my life. One of them, obviously, was to continue education and to pursue higher education. I went to U of T, and I decided to go to U of T to study political science, history, and philosophy. It's always been my passion to understand what other people are thinking, how governments work, political philosophy as well. And I was very engaged while a student in the student union and also in other groups, as you've mentioned. And to me, my passion is community service and public service. So when I graduated from U of T, I've always wanted to work in the public sector. But back in 2016, when I graduated from U of T, I wasn't able to find a job in Toronto. Toronto is very competitive. It has become very expensive. And so I did a little bit of research, and I decided to take on a contract at OLG in Sault Ste. Marie. I must confess that when I looked at the map, I said, "Oh well, that's not too north from Toronto. It's about an 8-hour drive." I underestimated the 8 hours. I would say when I first moved, and when I moved to Sault Ste. Marie, I moved in April, and it was still very very cold. I remember that the actual last snowstorm happened in early June, and you don't see that in Toronto. It's pretty warm in June. So when I moved to a very small city, being used to having transportation every 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Here in the Sioux, you would have buses come every half an hour on the weekdays, and after 6 p.m., you would have them every hour. In the weekend, you will have a 1 hour service. So I wasn't really used to that because as a student, I was able to afford a bus pass, a metro pass, as they call it. And that was expensive. And here in the Sioux, transportation is a big need. The other differences that I noticed is that many restaurants and establishments in downtown Sault Ste. Marie close really, really early. Some of them as early as 4 o'clock, 5 and 6. You would be walking down the street at 8 p.m. looking for a restaurant to be open, and many would be closed. So I started noticing a couple of things that I wasn't really used to it. You would go to our biggest mall, which is called a Station Mall, and the two extremes of the mall were actually closed. At some point, Sears used to be there, Walmart used to be there, and both shut down because, well, people were not going to Station Mall anymore. And then the pandemic hit, which made it even worse for small businesses and for establishments in the mall. People would shop online because there were lockdowns. So I started noticing a couple of things that were very different from Toronto. To make it short, I was able to my employee my employer, Ontario Lottery, they offered me a full-time permanent position at Ontario Lottery, and I took it. I said, this is a great opportunity. I'll stay in the Sioux, and I'm in love with the city. I love Sault Ste. Marie. Yes, it is very different from the city that I come from in Mexico, very different from Toronto, but I love nature. I love the people in the Sioux. Sault Ste. Marie is actually the friendliest city in the Algoma region. I can truly tell you that. It has amazing Italian food. I can no longer go back to the chain restaurants and say, oh, this is a great pizza, when you have great establishments that make amazing pizza. And I love nature. I love this city. It's extremely peaceful. They're very open minded, and I love Sault Ste. Marie. It's the best city to live, work, and raise a family.
All those things, we've gotten to know who you are, and now we're going to get in deeper into the political side. In Sault Ste. Marie, one of the biggest issues that you're concerned with. Well, let me ask you what you think it is. Is speed? Where does speeding fit on the scope of things that you want to help the community get a grip on?
No, absolutely. Well, as you can see in the background, you have my slogan, which is love, hope, and change, and to move forward together. So when I decided to run for office, before putting out a platform, before going through the nomination process, I met with many community leaders. I met with many community organizations. I talked to many residents in Ward 3 and across the city, and they raised a few issues. Sault Ste. Marie has gotten to the point where if you ask anyone here in the Sioux, they'll tell you that we're facing an opioid crisis, that we're facing an economic uncertainty, that we need to diversify our economy, that we need a stronger representation in City Hall. And speeding, it's actually one of the biggest issues in certain subdivisions across the city. Now, because it's a winter city, there's not many speed bumps, and therefore some of the streets that we have here in the Sioux do not have the speeding signs, the speeding limit signs, and people should know that if there's no signs, you should go at 50 kilometers per hour, but they go 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. Our police has actually caught a few people who have gone at 120 in a 50-kilometer per area road, and that is a big concern because we have an aging population. Many of our subdivisions do not have sidewalks. In children, they no longer feel safe playing on the street. We're a hockey city, and young people want to play hockey on the streets if they can't go to the arena, and they're not safe to do that. So when I talk to many residents across the city, they've said, well, Louis, if you were to run for office, what can you do? So I started doing research and talked to, as I said, many residents and organizations, and I noticed that one of the things that we haven't talked in Sault Ste. Marie, other northern cities such as Sudbury have talked about, is envisioning and planning on creating a vision zero in Sault Ste. Marie, and that means reducing speeding limits. I would say that in some subdivisions here in the Sioux, we can lower it to 30 or 40 kilometers per hour, not on the main roads, but on certain subdivisions to make it safer for children, for seniors, and for everyone who like to walk, who during the pandemic they were not allowed to go to malls or to restaurants, so they went on and walk. But there's also not sidewalks on certain subdivisions. So the plan that I have is to actually make our streets safer by design, which means in some cases narrowing the roads. And by that is building sidewalks, reducing the speeding limits, and to talk about residents about the idea of implementing in some locations bike lanes. Because as I said, we have many international students who come to the Sioux to study at Algoma and Sioux College, and some of them might not able to afford a bus pass. Some of them do not have cars, so bikes is their only mode of transportation. And it's a big city, right? So if you live in the Pea Patch, it takes about 20 to 25 minutes in a bike to go to Algoma University. Sometimes you might have to take one or two buses to get there. So in some cases, in the summer, a lot of students use the bike lanes. So we have to start having this conversation with our community members to ensure that we implement safety measures in the design of our streets.
All your education, everything you've learned, can now come in handy because, by your definition, the streets are a blank canvas that you can now do what
Absolutely.
many other towns can't do, which is there's built something built there, the drive, whatever, you know what I'm getting at, and you can
Yes.
explain it better than I, and I leave you to do it. The point is, you have a blank canvas, and as a leader, you have an opportunity to incorporate bike lanes. You have I know one of the things that you believe in. Actually, here in Wasaga, we're doing, where I am in Wasaga, we're doing the same thing. We're incorporating a third lane so that you can make left turns, right turns without stopping traffic.
That is absolutely right, and thank you for bringing that point. There was a meet and greet at the library. And we talked with many residents about the speeding concerns and the design in our streets, and I was the only candidate who talked about Vision Zero, who talked about reducing speeding limits, who talked to implementing safety in our streets. And I referred to one of the streets that is very, very busy in Ward 3. It's called People's Road, and currently there's two lanes, one going up, one going down. Sorry, there's two and two. So two going up, two going down, but there's no turning lane. And there's also no connection to the hub trail. It's called Fort Creek. And you see a lot of people walking on the side of the street, but it's not safe for them to do so. So I've said, and I've talked to many people on People's Road, how can we make that street safer, especially because um, drivers don't know that the speeding limit is 50 kilometers per hour. I said to them, what about if we reduce it to one lane going up, one lane coming down, and one middle turning lane as it connects to certain subdivisions across that road? And many were happy that I brought that up. And the reason I brought it up is because I talked to many residents about it. I believe in transparent, I believe in accountability. I believe that we should be developing our platform based on the people's need, not just sitting behind a desk and doing research. It's important to talk about the residents, to understand their needs, and that's how I implemented that vision. Just simply because I know that on certain streets across the city they are unsafe, and we need to start building safety measures. Especially because Susie and Maria, at this point, we're facing a population crisis. What does that mean? It means that we have a high death rate, but not a lot of people are migrating to the north. And therefore, our population is declining. And we're trying to make Sault Ste. Marie an attractive city to young people, to young families to come to the north. But if they start reading about our roads, when they start reading about our insecure, well, the problem that we're facing with the opioid crisis, when they start seeing that there's not a lot of job opportunities, then we're not making Sault Ste. Marie attractive. And that is one of the reasons I decided to jump in the race, because I'm 29 years old. I have the energy, the vision. We need to start thinking about bold and innovative ideas to bring Sault Ste. Marie into the future. Oftentimes, you hear in the streets that we're 20 years behind from other cities across the country, across the province. And I think that we need to start developing strategies to make the Sioux more attractive, to create more affordable housing for everyone, to encourage young families to be here in the Sioux so that their children can go to elementary schools, high schools, and feel safe to play on the streets after school, making sure that there's enough transportation to reduce gas emissions, to make our city greener. We are a very green city. We have a lot of parks. We have a humongous hub trail that people enjoy, so we need to maintain it. We need to have the infrastructure that we have. We need to make it better. And that's an election topic that we can get into about the downtown plaza and the move that the city council decided to move our current mill market, which is a farmer's market, into downtown. And and I understand that people are concerned about the economy. They understand about the decisions that city council have made in the past. But at this point, we need to move forward together. We need to start thinking about the future, and we need to make Sault Ste. Marie an attractive city. But we also need to make it safe. We need to create those economic conditions so that our population can grow, and can grow to a point where more businesses can come to the city.
Well, it's important that more businesses come to the city because they offer three times as much income to the city coffers than residents do. It's just a natural thing that business pay higher taxes, and also create employment and opportunities. You've spoken to it. People grow up in a town. If there's no reason for them to stay, they're going to go. So Sault Ste. Marie, that's something I'm interested in. I was interested in hearing how you're defining it as a shrinking. population. Um, what can you do municipally? I mean, you talked about a few things.
Yeah,
You talked about bringing in business, that you can help promote that. You talked about safety, making it a better place to live, making it a town that's more functional so that people have things to do there. You pointed out a negative factor that maybe you might want to turn around, which is at night after 4 o'clock. What's your plan in that regard, and making it possible that there can be a little longer business interaction later in the day, and by your definition, later in the afternoon?
that's right. No, you bring an excellent point, and I think that we have to put the people of Sault Ste. Marie first in every decision that we make in City Hall. Um, I talked about one of my proposals is when we have big development coming into the Sioux, we should encourage those developers to hire locals to complete the job, whether it's marketing, whether it's production, whether it's construction, whether it's hiring summer students. A lot of this, and this is a big topic, a lot of the people who are born and raised in the Sioux, their children end up choosing other institutions outside of the Sioux. They don't choose Algoma University and Sioux College as their higher education. They go to U of T, they go to Queens, they go to Ottawa, they go somewhere else. And then once they finish their education, obviously now they're 4 years into other cities, and they start looking for employment in the cities that they studied. Not they Some of them do end up coming back to the Sioux, but a huge majority not. The Nordic Institute said that only about 40% of the people who stay in the Sioux and study in the Sioux stay in the Sioux. The 60% end up going somewhere else after education because there's not enough job opportunities. So, for instance, one of my platforms when it comes to economic development and employment is when we have a huge developer coming into the Sioux to build something. Part of the contract that the city should actually push for is encourage them to hire students, whether at Algoma or Sioux College, or open up some uh, sort of summer jobs for these students to work in that development, so that we can create jobs in the Sioux, make them stay and have that experience so that they can put it in the resume. And it's a small town, I understand, but no job is too small. I heard of a production company who wanted to come here to the Sioux and shoot a film. It was going to be a $2 to $3 million project, but they didn't ended up choosing the Sioux because they were not the right conditions didn't exist for them to film that shoot. And I think it's very important that we create those economic conditions. That we need to approach any business as possible to come to the Sioux to set shop and bring jobs into the city. Now, another area where I think that the municipal government can work on is the downtown. There was just a business that opened a few weeks ago, and it's a very small business. And unfortunately, the rent is too high. There were not enough grants that they could have applied so that it could ease the cost of their opening. Rent is too expensive in downtown. There is insecurity in our downtown because of our drug crisis. And I think that we need to help those small businesses. We need to alleviate their taxes. We need to provide grants to those businesses so that we can fill as many stores as possible. The idea of city council over the few decades actually is to bring businesses to downtown, but that isn't working. The strategy that is current in place is not working. So we need to develop different ideas. We need to start thinking outside of the box, but at the same time, we should be creating grants for small businesses to give them the opportunity to stay open for as long as possible. We have many great restaurants who continue to be existing, who continue to remain open, but many of them have closed just because rent is too expensive. We're not making it easier for small businesses to stay in the Sioux. And that's one of the things that I talk to many residents about. In the downtown core, for instance, we don't have enough grocery stores, and we have a few apartment buildings who rely on these two stores who are on two extremes of downtown. One of them is called Grocer for Goods, and the other one is called City Meat Market. But aside from that, you don't have another location so that residents can go buy food. And we call it the food desert in Sault Ste. Marie because for seniors who can't really walk, who can't really take the bus, they need to hire a taxi cab and go all the way to Great Northern to go to Pinos or to go to Food Basics, Metro, or Rome's in Ward 3, and it's not, we need to create those conditions for everyone. And when I've been talking about creating a city for all, we must look at the needs of the young people, the middle age and young families, and our seniors as well. So there's a lot of topics that go into that. But economic development, for sure, and diversifying our economy is one of my biggest points in this election. Sorry, I can't hear you. I think we lost you. Well, the only thing I can say at this moment, we're just waiting for Fran to come back to the chat. But right behind me, you have a map of Ward 3, in all the subdivisions that are in Ward 3, but also all the polling stations. Election day is on October the 24th. There will be 13 polling stations across Ward 3. Polls will be open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. And I encourage everyone who's watching this show to go out and vote on election day. Municipal politics um, really is it's about the needs of everyday folks. Anything about from garbage collection to waterways to the environment to creating jobs in the city. Now, Susie and Marie, as I said, will be electing two new city councilors in Ward 3. I hope to be one of them. And the reason I think that I am qualified to be the next city councilor for Ward 3 is because I have the experience and I have the education to represent the people of Ward 3. I've knocked on more than 3,000 doors so far, and many of the folks here in Ward 3, they want change. They want new blood in City Council, and they want stronger representation. And I think that I can offer that. I have the experience, I have the knowledge, and I have talked to many grassroots organizations across the city who are supportive of my campaign. Now, I wanted to touch base about my slogan, which is love, hope, change. I love Sault Ste. Marie. It's the most beautiful city in Ontario. I believe that people are hopeful that this city can be a city where they can live, where they can work, and where they can raise a family. And like so many people in the Sioux, they are ready for change. They want to see new representation in City Hall, and that's what I'm offering. So on October the 24th, I hope that you can support me and support my campaign and my vision to move Sault Ste. Marie forward together. But I think now we have Frank.
Yeah, I seem to have technical difficulties. All right. Well, go ahead. Continue what you were saying, and I'll try to fix my screen as best I can.
Yes, absolutely. So that is my slogan: love, hope, and change. Everywhere I go to, the people of Ward 3, they seem to be tired of the same old politics that have been happening over at least 8 years. They want new people in City Hall. They want people who can represent their vision, their thoughts, and their aspirations. And I think that I have what it takes to be the next city councilor in Ward 3. Um, One of the things that again I've run on and that I'm running on is serious making our neighborhoods safer. And as many of you know, the opioid crisis is a big topic that many people are concerned about. I think that we need to have with the mayor and city council, they must have stronger powers to address this issue. But city council and the mayor, they're elected to a leadership position. They have the opportunity to make changes in City Hall, and they haven't done so. There's a lack of leadership. Now, we need to address this issue from the root cause. Why are people consuming drugs? Well, that could be simply because there is not enough employment in the city. There is not enough parks, or if there's parks, they're not maintained. They might think that there's not enough employment, or that they can't go to school. But as a matter of fact, the city council can push for better opportunities. They can create conditions so that they can stay away from drugs and addiction. But now that we have this problem in the zoo and across Ontario, across the country, I think that one of the things that I will be pushing for is declaring a public health emergency. By declaring a public health emergency in City Hall, the mayor can actually create a task force with Algoma Public Health and as well with the local police to address the issue. Once that task force is created, then they can develop a four-pillar system, which is harm, treatment, protection, prevention, and obviously enforcement. And it's some of the things that we need to talk about as a community, because it affects everyone from all walks of life. Drugs and addiction, they're not unique to one group. Unfortunately, it affects everyone here in the zoo and across the country. So we need to address it, and we need to address it fast, because the more we wait, we're going to lose more people. The treatment center that is being created, I think that's a great start. Unfortunately, it will only have 20 beds, but if we push and we continue to work with all levels of government, from the provincial and the federal one, then we can have more beds for a treatment center. But there's got to be a follow up. And I think that that is very important, because the treatment, we can help them, with cleansing and with rehab, but there is no follow up. There is no strategy currently in place to help them get settled in our daily lives. For instance, there hasn't been talk about providing them housing. There hasn't been talked about employment. They need, for instance, they might need IDs. For instance, when we go and apply for a job, the first thing that they ask us is for a resume. There might be very little resources to help them assist with that, but in the resume they also ask for a permanent address. They might be homeless, and we're not doing enough to help those people. I think that we should be addressing the issue more effectively, and most importantly, we need to work with all levels of government to ensure that the people of Sault Ste. Marie are safe in their neighborhoods.
Yeah, the concerns that you have, the opioid is a pandemic. It's
Yeah.
everywhere. There are victims everywhere, and it's a challenge for you and other prospective politicians to attack that. So now, did we get a chance to talk about taxes and how you feel you can deal with the taxes that people are paying? Is that what's the issue with taxes when it comes to Sault Ste. Marie?
Absolutely. I think that we need to address that issue. We need to start talking about it. The more I knock on doors here in Sault Ste. Marie, they are expressing concern over higher tax system that we have in Sault Ste. Marie. And they are saying that their taxes are very high. For seniors, it's becoming less and less affordable to afford living in the Sioux. And it's a very I would say very affordable place to live in Ontario, but it's becoming less affordable for everyone. I've committed myself to keep our taxes low as much as possible, but we also need to start thinking about diversifying our economy. For instance, I was very disappointed that there's a big the developer came to the zoo and said, well, I'm going to build 60 or 100 units, and I need licensing and permission from City Hall. City Hall said, okay, we can absolutely help you with that, but you need to you need to build 30% affordable housing units. The developer said, well, at this moment, I don't really think I can do that, but maybe in the future, I will develop more. The people of Sault Ste. Marie can't wait any longer. They need affordable housing as much as possible. So the city council didn't push for that. So now we're going to have, again, I can't remember the number, 60 or 100 units, and the developer is going to charge as much money as he wants or they want, and affordable housing wasn't built. So I said, okay, fine. If they don't want to build 30% affordable housing, then we should be looking into taxing them or having a fee for them. So when they come to the zoo, if they don't want to build affordable housing, then we'll charge them a certain percentage. The other problem that we're facing here in the zoo is a housing crisis. I know that Southern Ontario is also facing it, but here we don't have an empty home tax, right? There was a company that purchased about 129 houses. A company, not a person, a company purchased 129 houses here in the zoo, and most of those houses are empty. I believe that housing should be, it's a human right. Everyone should be able to have a house to live. That's where they feel safe. That's where they feed their family. That's where families are they work in their community. And if they don't have a place to be safe, then what kind of community we are? And so I
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I really don't want to go by that. A company bought 159 houses. Is there any indication as to what they're doing with those houses?
know 129 houses. There's
129.
no
Well, is there any
indication.
indication of what they're doing with the houses?
No, no.
Um,
In the city, there's some investigation going on, obviously, by our local newspapers, but we know that a huge percentage of those houses are empty.
are they together?
No, they're all across the city.
So it's not to make a okay. Well, that's to me that's an interesting story because the empty house thing is something like you said that's big around here. Yeah, it's that's kind of concerning. Okay, do me a favor. We only got a couple of minutes left, so why don't you review everything that you said here today and encapsulate it so that the voters can decide whether you're their person to talk to. But first, I want to remind people of this: there are two candidates in your ward. So I guess if you give me a short answer to how important is it and how do you see working with the other candidate that's in your ward?
I think it's very important. I've actually have sat and talked to all the four candidates running for city council. On election day, they will be able to pick two out of the four candidates, and I think that since the mayor needs 6 votes to pass any bylaws, it's important to start working now. I believe that we're all running on the same platform. I believe that we put our name forward because we love this city, but it's important to start addressing some of the pressing issues that our community is facing. So when I announced my candidacy, I met with my opponents. I talked to them about the issues that Ward 3 is facing, and we made a commitment to work together if elected, so that we can represent the Ward 3 residents to the best of our abilities. At the end of the day, we're going to get 2 votes out of the 11, and we need to represent the people of Ward 3 to the best that we can. And with that, I'll move on to my platform. I'm running on 3 main issues, which is serious action on speeding, serious representation in City Hall, and safer neighborhoods. I think we need to create and we need to bring back town hall meetings. It's very important to keep our decision making public. Um, Many residents have raised concerns that the current city councilors that we have in Ward 3, they didn't do that. They went to City Hall and made decisions on behalf of the people of Ward 3, but they didn't consult with them. I think it's very important to keep all channels of communication open. And I've said to a lot of my to a lot of the houses that I've knocked, and to the people that I've talked to, my platform has all the contact information that is needed, so that if elected, I will keep my cell phone number open, my email open, and I want to talk to as many people as possible. I printed 10,000 of these flyers because I believe that I should meet with as many people in Ward 3 as possible. We need to start creating solutions to the problems that we're facing, but we need to start thinking about that our city is growing. We need to create the right economic conditions to make businesses stay here in the zoo. I know that taxes is a big concern for our people. We do need to keep them down, but we need to diversify our economy. We need to start thinking about an empty home tax. We need to start thinking about a development charge. We need to start putting jobs out there for young people so that they can stay here in the zoo. We need to make our city more affordable, just because I think that it's important The future is our young people. We need to encourage them to go out and vote, but we need to give them a reason. We also need to give them a reason to stay in the Sioux. And that's in a nutshell, that is me. I love Sault Ste. Marie. I believe and I have hopes that this city is the right city for everyone to live, to work, and raise a family. And as I said before, this is a change election. Many of the people in Ward 3 and across the city are ready for change. And I hope that on October the 24th, we can move forward together and vote for Luis Moreno.
Okay, thank you. We'll have to leave it there. He's Luis Moreno, running for Sault Ste. Marie's Ward 3 Council. I'm Candid Frank Sanishi. Thank you for watching Candid Frank Live's Open Forum, seen live Fridays at 4 p.m. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Open Forum, other news, entertainment, and sports programming we offer, please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Until next week, I'm Candid Frank. See you then.
Thank you.